I've been working the same job for 6 years and haven't missed a single day. Not one. When my boss told me to take 2 weeks off before I burned out completely, I didn't argue. I'd already been a dick to all my coworkers the last month. I packed my bag that night, threw it in the back seat, and left before sunrise. I hadn't taken a real vacation since college. The plan was simple: drive a few states over, visit my parents, clear my head, and remind myself that life existed outside fluorescent lights and inbox notifications. The first few hours were exactly what I'd hoped for. The sky was a washed-out gray that softened everything. The world smelled like wet grass. I drank gas station coffee that tasted like cardboard and listened to static-flecked classic rock until I didn't think about work at all. By late afternoon, the highways had narrowed into 2-lane back roads that weaved through farmland and patches of pine. My GPS lost service sometime after noon, but it didn't bother me. I had directions printed out, a full tank, and no schedule. Then I passed the green sign. It was weathered, half swallowed by kudzu, and I almost missed it. The white paint was peeling, but I could still make out the letters that read out the county name. After that, the road curved through the trees for what felt like forever. The canopy grew so thick that sunlight came through in slanted strips, each one pulsing as the car moved beneath it. I rolled the windows down to clear the smell of the engine and felt the air shift, warm, heavy, still. When the woods finally opened up, I saw it. A small town sat in the valley ahead, quiet and neat as a painting. The houses were all white with green shutters, the lawns perfectly trimmed. A church steeple rose above everything, and a narrow main street led straight to a diner with a silver roof that caught the last of the daylight. At the edge of town stood a sign. The paint was fresh, the wood new. It didn't list a name or population. It only said, "Welcome home." I slowed the car, smiling at how odd it was to find a place this quaint without a single GPS marker. Maybe it was one of those old forgotten stops that used to sit along the main roads before interstates were built. A few people were out, an old man sweeping a porch, a woman watering flowers. They all turned to look as I passed, and though I couldn't see their faces clearly, I could tell they were smiling. The diner was the only place that looked open. A faded neon sign buzzed weakly in the window. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, so I parked out front and went in. A bell jingled above the door, and the smell of coffee and frying oil hit me. The place looked spotless. Linoleum floors, booths with red leather cushions, framed photographs of old cars and parades. A woman behind the counter smiled before I could say a word. "Afternoon, sugar. Sit wherever you like." Her name tag said Edna. She looked to be in her 50s, hair curled and pinned, makeup perfect in that old-fashioned way that made her seem almost ageless. I ordered a cheeseburger, fries, and a black coffee. She didn't write anything down, just said, "Coming right up, sweetheart," and vanished through the kitchen doors. I sat by the window and watched the town through the glass. The street was nearly empty, but I could feel eyes on me, people glancing from doorways or windows, quickly looking away. It wasn't threatening, exactly, more like curiosity. When Edna came back, she set the plate in front of me. "You're not from around here, are you?" "Just passing through," I said, taking a bite. The burger was perfect. Juicy, crisp on the edges, cooked exactly how I liked it. "This is great, by the way." She smiled, almost shyly. "We aim to please." "Is there a road that leads back to the interstate?" I asked. My GPS kind of died on me. "Sure thing. Just take the road you came in on, sweetheart. It'll take you anywhere you need to go." Her tone was casual, but something about the phrasing made my stomach tighten. I thanked her, paid, and left a few extra bills on the counter. She gave me a small wave through the window as I backed out of the parking lot. The sun was low, orange light stretching the shadows across the road as I headed out the same way I'd come. The air cooled, the woods thickened again, and for a while, I drove without seeing a single car or sign. Then I came around a bend and saw the same welcome home sign again, At first, I thought I'd made a wrong turn, but I hadn't taken any turns. I'd gone straight the entire time. The diner was there, the church, the houses, everything. I checked the clock. I'd been driving for almost 20 minutes. I wasn't sure what unsettled me more, that I was somehow back where I started, or that the sun hadn't moved an inch. I figured it was some kind of weird loop in the road. I'd gotten lost in rural backroads before, twisting routes that looked identical and led you right back where you began. Still, something about this felt deliberate. I parked in front of the gas station this time, hoping to ask for directions. The place had an old analog pump and a dusty open sign taped to the door. Inside, a radio played softly from somewhere I couldn't see. A man behind the counter looked up as I entered. He was tall, with thinning gray hair slicked straight back, and the kind of leathery tan that comes from years outdoors. His name tag said Hank. "Back so soon?" he asked with a smile. I frowned. "Sorry?" He gestured at my car through the window. "Thought you just came through here." "I might have passed by earlier," I said, forcing a laugh. "Roads around here loop kind of funny." Hank nodded slowly, that same easy smile never leaving his face. "Ain't but one road through town, friend. The same one you came in on." I hesitated. "Yeah, Edna at the diner said that too." He chuckled. "Then Edna's still sharp as ever." I bought a bottle of water just for an excuse to stand there. The air inside the station felt heavy, like humidity that wouldn't lift. When I stepped back outside, the street looked emptier than before. I hadn't noticed it earlier, but none of the houses had cars in their driveways. Not one. The trees beyond the edge of town swayed slightly, even though there was no wind. I decided to try one more time. This time I kept count of every curve, every landmark, every mile marker. I even dropped a crumpled napkin out the window as I went, hoping to spot it again if I somehow circled back. The forest grew denser, the road narrower, and I could have sworn I saw movement between the trees, a flicker of white, like someone walking parallel to the car. After 15 minutes, the woods began to thin. Relief hit me. Then the pavement straightened, and the diner's silver roof flashed in the distance. The welcome home sign stood in the same place. The napkin was gone. When I drove past the diner, Edna was standing outside wiping her hands on a rag. She waved like she hadn't seen me in years. "Back already, sugar?" I didn't answer her. I just kept driving through town until I hit the opposite edge, then slowed the car to a stop. I sat there with the engine idling, trying to think. If the road out of town brought me right back in, maybe the one going the other direction did the same. There had to be another route, something unpaved or hidden, a way that wasn't marked. I drove aimlessly for the next half hour. Every road ended in a cul-de-sac or a fence. Every turn circled back toward Main Street. When I finally stopped again, the gas gauge had dropped below half. The thought came slow but sharp. I could run out of gas before I figured this out. I pulled into the diner's parking lot and just sat there. Edna watched me through the window for a long time before coming out. "You all right, sugar? You look a little lost." "Yeah," I said, rubbing my temples. "I think I took a wrong turn somewhere. Every road I try brings me back here." Edna nodded slowly. "Well, these roads'll do that if you don't pay close attention. Some of them go where you don't mean to." That didn't make any sense. "Is there a map I can borrow? Or maybe someone who can point me toward the interstate?" "Sure," she said. "You talk to the sheriff. His office is just across from the church." She smiled again, too kindly, too calm, and went back inside before I could ask anything else. The sheriff's office was a single-story brick building with a flagpole out front. The flag hung limp in the still air. Inside, the walls were covered in old black and white photos, county fairs, hunting groups, smiling faces from decades ago. A man came out from the back room wearing a tan uniform and a badge that looked more ornamental than functional. He was big, built like a farmhand, with a heavy mustache and a gentle drawl. "Afternoon," he said. "Heard you were looking for me." I explained what was happening, how I'd tried leaving, how I kept coming back, how I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. He listened quietly, nodding every so often. When I finished, he smiled like I was a child who'd asked where the sun went at night. "Don't worry yourself," he said. "These roads play tricks sometimes. Folks get turned around. You just follow the main one till it splits by the old barn a few miles up. Take the left fork, and you'll be back on the highway before you know it." "Barn?" I asked. "I haven't seen any barn," he chuckled. "You will now. Sometimes it don't show till you know to look for it." Something about that phrasing sent a ripple down my spine. Still, I thanked him and left. When I got back into the car, I saw him standing in the doorway, still smiling, still watching. I drove until dusk. The light through the trees dimmed to a dull bronze, then fell away completely. The road narrowed, dipped, rose again. For a long time I thought I'd finally broken free. Then the forest opened, and the same welcome home sign glowed in my headlights. I stopped the car right there in the road. The sign looked newer than before. The paint was brighter, the letters sharper, and the church bell was ringing. I don't remember parking. I don't remember deciding to go inside. I just remember standing in the street as the bell stopped and the town went quiet again. The diner lights were off. The gas station was dark, but the church doors were open, spilling a pale glow onto the grass. Inside, candles lined the walls. The air smelled of wax and dust. There were no people, no sound except my shoes on the wooden floorboards. At the front of the chapel was a small wooden podium, and behind it, a painting. Jesus standing with his arms spread, but the face wasn't his. The eyes were black, the mouth wrong, stretched in a way that made me step back without meaning to. I turned and left. When I got outside, the sky had shifted. It wasn't night exactly, but it wasn't dawn either. The clouds looked frozen mid-roll, and everything had that soft gray cast like an old photograph. I decided to find a place to sleep and try again in the morning. The diner's sign flickered faintly as I passed. The motel was small, a single row of rooms with green doors. The clerk behind the desk looked up when I came in. "You're the new guest," he said, not even asking my name. "We don't get many new faces these days." His smile was the same as everyone else's, warm, fixed, too polite. "How much for a night?" "Don't you worry about that," he said. "You can settle up when you leave." The way he said it made my throat go dry. The room was clean but outdated. Rotary phone, floral bedspread, one of those old TVs that took a minute to warm up. When I turned it on, only static played. But beneath the static, I could swear I heard voices whispering. I turned it off. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, sunlight was spilling through the curtains. For a brief, blissful second, I thought I'd dreamed everything. Then I stepped outside. The car was parked where I'd left it, but the street looked slightly different. The buildings were all the same, but their colors had faded. When I drove down Main Street, more people were out this time. A man mowing a lawn, 2 kids riding bikes. They all waved cheerfully as I passed. I waved back, then froze. The kids, they were the same ones I'd seen in the photo at the sheriff's office. The same clothes, the same smiles. And when they rode by again, from the opposite direction this time, I realized the dirt on their jeans hadn't changed either. They were looping too. I stopped in front of the diner, though I didn't plan to. My hands just did it. Edna was there again, wiping down a table by the window. She looked up, smiled, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. I went inside. "Morning, sugar," she said brightly. "Coffee?" My voice came out rough. "Do you remember me?" She blinked. "Of course. You were in just yesterday." "No," I said. "I mean before that, the first time. Do you remember me asking about leaving?" Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered just for a second. "Why would you want to leave?" she asked softly. The words didn't sound like hers. The accent was wrong, the tone off. I didn't answer. I stood up and left the coffee untouched. When I got into the car, I turned the radio on without thinking. Static filled the speakers again, but this time, beneath it, there was something else. My name. I turned the volume down. The whisper followed, low and patient, threading through the static like a pulse. Jesse. The longer I listened, the clearer it became, a hum that shaped itself into words. Don't go. I slammed the radio off. The sound didn't stop. It was coming from the air vents now, from the engine, from the gravel under the tires when I drove. Every corner of the town seemed to echo that same faint murmur, as if the voice wasn't in the radio at all. It was in the place. I tried leaving one more time that night. I drove faster than I should have, headlights cutting through the dark, trees blurring on either side. My hands shook so badly I could barely keep the car straight. When I broke through the last curve, the welcome home sign came into view again. Only now, the letters were smeared. The wood splintered like something had clawed at it. A figure stood beside it. It was the sheriff. His hat was gone, his face gray in the high beams. He raised a hand and pointed behind me. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw the diner lights on again. Edna was standing in the doorway. I've stopped trying to leave. I don't know how long I've been here. The sun comes and goes, but I can't tell if it's real. The people still wave, they still smile, but I think they're only doing what they've always done, like they're stuck in a loop that never ends. Every time I talk to someone, they seem to know me a little better. The first day, Edna called me Sugar. Yesterday, she called me Jesse. There's one spot in town that still has service, right here behind the church, if I hold the phone at an angle and don't move. I've been trying to post this for hours. If anyone reads this, if anyone knows what this place is, please tell me. I think the town is remembering me now. When I walk past windows, I see my reflection smile before I do. When I drive, the radio whispers home over and over, no matter what station I tune to. And tonight, when I looked at the church painting again, it wasn't Jesus anymore. It was me. I'm tired. I've used up half a tank driving in circles, and the air smells like something sweet and rotting. If this uploads, know that I tried. I really did. I'm just going to sit here until it's over. I don't think anyone ever really leaves this town, not even if you're just passing by. I don't know how long I've been here. Days blur together like water running over glass. The clocks all say different things, and no matter how long I stay awake, the sun never sets the same way twice. Sometimes it fades, sometimes it stalls, sometimes it just blinks out like someone threw a switch. But I've stopped caring what time it is. The only thing that matters now is getting out. The first thing I tried was walking. I filled a backpack with water, food, a flashlight, and left the car parked in front of the motel. I followed the main road out of town until the pavement gave way to gravel, then to dirt, then to nothing but pine needles. The air grew thicker the farther I went, like I was wading through it instead of breathing it. After a few miles, I stopped seeing the tree line altogether, just more road stretching ahead, perfectly straight. When I turned around, the town was already back in sight, the church steeple poking above the trees like it had never left. The second day, I tried driving at night. I thought maybe whatever was happening only worked while the sun was up. I drove until the gas gauge hit empty, headlights cutting through the fog. But when the car sputtered out, I was parked in front of the diner again. The lights were off, but Edna was still inside, standing by the window with that same polite smile. She didn't move when I honked, didn't blink, just watched as I sat there trying not to scream. The third day, I started leaving marks, spray paint arrows on the asphalt, branches snapped in half, rocks stacked into crude little towers. Every time I circled back, they were gone. The town had smoothed itself over, neat and pristine again. That was the first time I noticed something else, people calling me by name. The motel clerk said, "Morning, Jesse," like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hadn't told him my name. When I went to the diner for coffee, Edna asked if I'd slept better last night. I told her I didn't think I'd mentioned that I wasn't sleeping. She smiled. Oh, you must have. You always tell me everything, sugar. The way she said always made my skin crawl. I left half the coffee sitting there and went to the gas station to ask Hank if there was another route. Maybe a back road, maybe a dirt path out through the woods. He pointed at a wall map I could have sworn wasn't there before. A red line cut straight through town and looped around like a noose. At the bottom, scrawled in pencil, was a name I didn't recognize, but Hank tapped it like it meant something to me. Your granddad helped build this road, didn't he? I stared at him. What? Sure did, he said cheerfully. Helped lay the first gravel himself. You come from good stock, Jesse. I backed out without another word. When I turned around, the map was gone. That night, I drove again. The sky was black this time, not the pale gray it usually was, and the stars looked wrong, too close, too many. I kept my eyes on the road until I saw the welcome home sign. Its wood clean again, paint shining fresh under the headlights. For a second, I thought I saw movement behind it, a silhouette, human-shaped but not human still. When I blinked, it was gone. I got out of the car and tried to tear the sign down. The wood felt soft and wet like it had just been painted. When I pulled my hands away, the paint clung to my skin, red instead of white. I ran back to the car, drove until I couldn't keep my eyes open, and ended up parked at the motel again. The clerk waved from the window when I stumbled inside. Rough night? He asked. You always did push yourself too hard. He said it like we were old friends. I didn't answer him. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed until the light started leaking through the curtains again. My hands still looked stained, the red gone darker overnight, like it had sunk under the skin. The mirror above the sink showed a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Eyes hollow, face drawn, jaw tight enough to ache. For a second, I thought the reflection was breathing slower than I was. In a moment of weakness, frustration, and anger, I reared my arm back and smashed the mirror with my bare fist. The sound barely echoed. For a second, I just stared at what I'd done. The glass had splintered in a spider web of cracks, thin lines radiating out from the point of impact where my knuckles had gone through. Blood slid down the glass in narrow threads, catching the weak yellow light like it was rust instead of red. My hand throbbed, pieces of silvered glass still stuck in the skin. I tried to wash it off, but the water from the tap ran cloudy, smelling faintly of metal. When I looked up again, the cracks in the mirror seemed to shift, like they were trying to pull together, to mend themselves around the reflection of my hand. By the next morning, it was whole again. That's when I started testing everything. I left the motel with my phone recording video, drove out of town, turned the car around, and played it back. The footage showed the road leading out just fine until it reached the woods. Then the screen flickered, the camera refocused, and suddenly I was driving past the diner again. I replayed it 3 times. The same thing happened each time, like a film reel stitched in a loop. Later that afternoon, I parked in front of the church. The bell was silent, but I could feel the air vibrating around it, like the sound was waiting to happen. I went inside and looked at the painting again. The figure's face was blank now. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, unfinished skin. I took one of the candles from the altar and pressed it against the frame. Wax dripped across the image, thick and slow. The next morning, the painting was perfect again. Edna waved when I passed the diner. How's your mama doing, Jesse? You said she wasn't feeling too good last week. I froze. I hadn't spoken about my mom since I left home. I started, but she just smiled that same gentle smile, tilting her head. Sure you did, sugar. You must have forgot. I left without answering. I could feel her eyes on me all the way back to the car. By the end of that day, I'd tried breaking every window on Main Street. Each one shattered under the tire iron, sharp cracks echoing down the block. I thought maybe if I wrecked enough of it, something would have to change. But the next morning, every pain was whole again. My arms were sore, my hands blistered, and the town looked untouched. That was the first time I heard laughter. Not loud, just soft, somewhere in the air around me, like a child's giggle carried on the wind. It followed me down the street, through the gas station, all the way to the car. When I turned the ignition, it stopped. On the fifth morning, if it was morning, I found mail in the motel's drop box. A plain white envelope with no stamp. My name written neatly across the front. Inside was a photograph, me standing beside Edna in front of the diner. The same pose, same angle as the one I'd seen on my phone's background the first day. Only now, Hank and the sheriff stood in the background, smiling like a family portrait. People greeted me differently after that. The man sweeping his porch called me neighbor. The kids on the bikes yelled my name before riding off. Even the sheriff tipped his hat and said, "Good to see you out and about again." Again. I didn't stop driving after that. I went through the woods, across fields, through backyards. The roads didn't matter anymore. The town rearranged itself no matter which way I turned. Once, I crashed through a fence and ended up in someone's garden, but when I looked up, the diner was across the street. The smell of frying oil filled the air, and Edna stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on that same rag. "You'll hurt yourself, sugar," she said. "No need for all that fuss. You're home." That word again, home. The car would be parked somewhere new. The gas station, the church, sometimes in front of the motel again. Each time the fuel gauge reset to half a tank, no matter how far I'd driven. My hand had started to heal wrong, the skin along my knuckles tightening into pale scars that almost looked like lines of writing. When I stretched my fingers, it stung, but the pain was grounding. It reminded me I was still real, at least for now. Sometime after what I think was the 8th day, I saw something different. The town square, if you could call it that, was crowded. People stood talking in pairs. Kids played tag near the church steps. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and something sweet, almost like apples left too long in the sun. For a heartbeat, it looked normal. Then I realized every face was turned toward me. Not directly, not in unison, but each one found me eventually. Eyes following me as I crossed the street, smiles widening, nods exchanged like I'd just come home from work. Edna waved from the diner window. Hank lifted his coffee in greeting. Even the sheriff was there, leaning against his car. "Morning, Jesse," he called. "Good to see you out early." I didn't respond. I just kept walking, pretending not to notice that some of them were whispering my name, their lips moving in unison as they spoke. By that afternoon, I found a new photo waiting under my windshield wiper. This one showed me standing in front of the church, wearing the sheriff's badge on my chest. The ink was still wet when I picked it up. That night, the bell rang again. 3 times. I counted. The sound was deeper now, like it came from under the ground instead of above it. I looked out from the motel window and saw shadows gathering at the base of the steeple. Dozens of them, still as statues. When the last toll faded, they all turned toward me at once. I drove. Didn't even grab my bag this time. The headlights flickered as I tore down the road, past the diner, past the sign. The trees blurred together until they looked like a single dark wall. The air buzzed in my ears, thick with static. I thought I was making progress. I felt it. The odometer was ticking up, the temperature dropping, the fog thinning. Then I saw someone standing in the middle of the road ahead. For a second, I thought it was the sheriff again. But when the beams caught him, I saw my own face looking back. He was dressed like me, same jacket, same blood-stained hand. He smiled faintly, raised a hand in greeting, and walked toward the diner on the right side of the road. I saw Edna open the door for him. I don't remember deciding to move. I just slammed the gas pedal. The car roared forward, trees whipping by, the engine screaming as I tore past the sign. The world seemed to twist for a moment, everything bending inward, folding itself around the sound of the tires on asphalt. Then it was gone. The trees opened into a wide expanse of gray sky, and ahead of me was a familiar stretch of highway. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, the first service I'd seen in days. A green exit sign flashed by. I slowed down, shaking so hard my hand slipped on the wheel. For a long time I just drove without thinking, past billboards, past rest stops, until I saw another car again, a minivan with a family inside. The sight made my throat tighten. When I finally pulled into a gas station, the world looked normal again. Real sunlight, real sound, the smell of fuel and hot pavement. I sat there until I could breathe without trembling. Then I glanced at my phone, and my lock screen had changed. It was a photo of me standing in front of the diner. Only this time, I wasn't smiling. Behind me, through the window, I could see the other version of myself sitting at the counter, waving. I kept thinking about him, the other me, the one who walked down the street like he'd been born there. He moved with this calm, unhurried ease, smiling when people called his name, laughing at things I couldn't hear. The way Edna leaned toward him at the diner window, the way Hank clapped him on the shoulder, it was all so natural, like it had always been that way. I realized then that the town hadn't been trying to keep me there. It had been trying to make me there. Each loop, each morning, every detail it learned about me was just another stitch, sewing me into its memory until I belonged. And now that it had what it wanted, I can't stop thinking about why.